Hi, I'm Maggie Law. I'm Director of Product Design here at Okta, and I'm the colleague that you want at the desk next to you. So I'm going to talk about usability and security tonight, but I thought first I'd give you a sort of meandering tour through my career. I started out in college as a word nerd. I was a classics major, that's Greek and Latin, and I also took classes in Egyptian hieroglyphics and American Sign Language, which prepared me really well for a series of menial jobs in offices for a number of years after that. So to keep it interesting, I joined a rock band, and I dreamed every day that I could just quit this job and go on tour. But after a few years, that didn't happen. So I kind of accepted, all right, I have to get a real job. And around that time, actually, the web was ubiquitous. It was mainstream. And I started picking up HTML and CSS, a little bit of JavaScript. I started taking some classes in databases and object-oriented programming, got really interested in it. So I went back to school. And since I got my master's degree, I've put it into practice at companies that largely focus on enterprise scale problems. And in recent years, it's been more focused in the security domain. And that's what I do here today at Okta. And as Mindy said, our recruiters are over there. And we are hiring on the design team, so I'm happy to talk to folks. There's one more chapter I'd like to share about my career journey, and I think it'll connect with this audience and the Girl Geek X community in general. I volunteer for a local nonprofit called the Women's Audio Mission, WAM for short. So I mentioned earlier that music played a big role in my career in my early days, and now I have a career in technology, and WAM kind of taps into both of those for me. So that's very exciting. I'm probably preaching to the choir here when I say that it's really important to expose women to technology and opportunities in technology, to recruit them into tech jobs, to support them and retain them throughout their long careers. But how many of you knew that there's been a 70% decline in young women entering college STEM programs, science, technology, engineering, and math? And I'm not talking 70% decline since like the 60s or the 70s, actually just since 2000. And even more alarming, within the audio industry, less than 5% of all the people who hold technical jobs, like audio producers and sound engineers and mixers, are women. These are the people who shape and define how we hear and what we hear in media every day. So WAM exists to solve that problem, training 2,000 women and girls every year in the only 2 audio recording studios in the world that have been entirely built and are run by women. For the women who go through the WAM program, they're directly going into pipeline for audio professions and working on that less than 5% statistic. But for the girls who go through the program, these are middle school and high school age girls, mostly girls of color, most from families that are low or very low income. And WAM has a broader plan for them. It's not necessarily that anyone expects them to grow up and be audio engineers, although that would be great. But it's really about using music and creativity to expose them to engineering concepts, to STEM principles. And as you can see from this quote, they get pretty cocky. And it's awesome to see, especially at this formative age, where they're sort of deciding whether this is something that's available to them. So it's about opening doors for them. I'm currently the president of the board of Women's Audio Mission, so if anyone's interested in learning about being on the board, come talk to me. So that's who I am. But how did I get interested in design and user experience specifically? Well, what hooked me in was human-computer interaction. So the way I think about this is it's this magical, mysterious, sometimes very awkward zone in which people and computers stare face to face and have a conversation. So the thing is that computers and people are extremely capable, but we're fundamentally wired differently. So there are some things that we're good at that computers are bad at, and vice versa. People are emotional, judgmental, rational. We have empathy, and computers are excellent at crunching numbers and regurgitating really complex, long strings of characters. So that kind of gives you a sense of how that human-computer interaction conversation can be awkward. And so it really fed into my thinking about what usability means, because it's when that conversation goes smoothly. So if, for me as a user, as I'm using something on a computer, it's easy to learn. Oops, I always do this. It's easy to learn. It's familiar, and it supports my efforts in performing my tasks. Okay, so let me pause for a second and share with you a story that goes back 15 years. It's something that was really formative for me as a designer. I've tried to keep it with me throughout my career, and I think it has an important lesson. So it's about my Aunt Mary. She's my design muse. She's my father's sister. She's a professional potter, and she's one of the smartest people I know. And about 15 years ago, she also wears the label Luddite like a badge of honor. She's not an early adopter at all. But she will use technology when she has to. We probably all know someone like this. So about 15 years ago, I helped set her up with a new computer. It was actually an old computer. It was my old computer that a hand-me-down that I sold to her for pottery credit. And I set it up on her desk. We were sitting side by side, and I booted it up. And what she said as it booted up really surprised me. She said, "Wow, just look at that pretty blue." And I'd seen that pretty blue however many millions of times in the years that I had this computer, but it never really occurred to me that this was a moment of delight. For her, it really was. Also, I'd forgotten to take some of the files off of the computer. And one of them was a picture of cows, I guess, that I took with a digital camera called cows.jpg, and she saw that, and she said, "Cows jumping?" And she also saw some web files, probably from my website at the time, and she saw HTML, and she said, "Hate mail?" So this was actually a really important moment for me. It was an aha moment, because it made me realize that here we are sitting in front of the same computer, having an interaction with it, but we're bringing completely different perspectives, expectations, levels of computer literacy, and mental models to this UI. And there's a team of experts who put together a UI that needs to talk to both of us and however many millions of other people. So that was important, and it really drove home for me how challenging usability can be. So I've talked about usability. Let's talk about security and how it's actually really tightly intertwined with usability. Okay, so first, a security primer. There are three basic concepts that you should know about security: identification, who you are; authentication, a confirmation that you are in fact who you say you are; and then authorization, what level of access that you've been granted. So put another way, if you think about this as that conversation, it's as though I could sit in front of a computer and I can say, "Hi, I'm Maggie Law," and it says, "Oh, are you?" "Okay, Maggie Law, prove it." "Sure, here's my proof." I might type in my password or maybe put my finger on a scanner. "Yep, checks out. I'll unlock the orange door for you." You can go on. So this is how we walk through the front door of all kinds of systems, multiple times throughout the day. And it paints our impression of that experience. And these front doors are so prevalent, actually, that a famous UX researcher named Jared Spool once observed that probably the most common agile user story is, "As a user, I want to log in." And so I thought that's really interesting. I went to Google just to kind of check that, and I typed in, "As a user, I want to," and sure enough, it auto-prompted 2 user stories that were exactly that. And he also added a really helpful, important truth here, which is that no user actually wants to log in. it's really tedious. It's friction, and it's annoying. So let's talk about these front doors, because these front doors are everywhere, as I said. And oftentimes when we think about these front doors, the first thing we think about is username and password, right? So this is an interesting table. This table shows you the most common passwords 8 years running, right? So remember what I said earlier about how there's certain things that humans are really bad at, and one of those is regurgitating really long, complicated strings. And it's why password managers are really important. It's why Okta is really important. I see something like this, and I think, this is people desperately trying to make security usable. And in doing that, they're compromising their security. So it doesn't help also when you get these convoluted rules that try to force you to make your password more complicated. This is actually taken from a real example. Probably 2 weeks ago, I had to change my password on a local utilities website, and I could not for the life of me figure out why this password was breaking that requirement. At least one of the following. It's like, wait, it's got a plus, and it's got a little up caret. And I called the technical support. I spent 10 minutes. The two of us took that much time realizing, okay, it's that hyphen. But nowhere, that rule does not say you can't use a hyphen. Nowhere does it say you can't use a hyphen. So this sucks. So needless to say, there's an enormous cost to when security is not usable. So for example, in e-commerce, oftentimes today, it's kind of normal that you'll see guest checkouts. That's because they've learned that if they put all this friction in front of your shopping experience, they're going to lose a customer. Costly tech support. See earlier memo about my experience. 10 minutes on the call. In fact, there was a survey done in 2014 that estimated the cost to businesses for password problems only, just password troubleshooting, was $420 per employee per year. Just passwords. And then it gets even worse if the UIs that admins who configure these policies that define how end users get in through these front doors is not usable because they might make a policy that's weak or broken. So I'll just end by saying, is anyone surprised? And this is the sort of thing that Okta focuses on every single day. We're making it easier to get through these front doors, but not compromising on security by taking the burden off of users. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.